If someone told me that my own sister would destroy my life, I would have laughed. I trusted her. I protected her. I gave up everything so she could have a better future. But standing there in handcuffs, with my father's cold eyes staring at me and my sister's fake tears rolling down her cheeks, I realized one terrible truth. The people you love the most can break you the hardest. And my nightmare was only beginning. My name is Sandra. I'm 26 years old. Life hadn't been easy since Mom passed away. After she was gone, everything fell on my shoulders: the house, the bills, and my sister Sophie's college fees. Dad worked but barely earned enough. Sophie was his princess, always spoiled and protected. I never complained. I thought I was doing the right thing. I worked 2 jobs. Every month, I paid Sophie's tuition, the mortgage, and the grocery bills. I even secretly paid off some of Dad's hospital debts. No one knew. I didn't want praise. I just wanted my family safe. But all that changed one cold morning. I was sipping coffee, trying to gather strength for another long workday, when Dad stormed into the kitchen. His face was red, and he was gripping a stack of papers in his shaking hands. $50,000, he roared. Gone from my locker. And look at this. Your name's all over these transactions. I stared at him, confused.
What?
I don't know anything about this, Dad. He slammed the papers on the table. My hands shook as I picked them up. There were printouts of bank transfers, receipts, and forged signatures, all pointing to me. My head spun. I had never seen any of these before. Behind him, Sophie entered the room. She wore a sad expression, her eyes glossy with fake tears. Sandra, why would you do this? She whispered. My heart sank. The air felt heavy, like a dark cloud was hanging over me. You're lying, I shouted. I never touched your money, Dad. You know me. But he didn't listen. His face twisted in anger and disappointment. He grabbed the phone. I won't let you get away with this.
Arrest.
The next thing I knew, 2 police officers were standing at the door. I barely had time to breathe before cold handcuffs were locked around my wrists. Ma'am, you're under arrest for theft, one officer said calmly. As they led me out of my own house, I saw neighbors staring from their windows. Whispers spread like wildfire. My face burned with shame. And right before I was placed in the police car, I glanced back. Sophie stood next to Dad, gently wiping away a tear that I knew was fake. But behind her sad act, I saw it, a tiny smirk she couldn't fully hide. At that moment, I understood. My own sister had framed me. The police station was cold. The room smelled like metal and old papers. I sat across from a detective who kept asking the same question over and over. Where's the money, Sandra? My throat was dry. I didn't steal anything. I swear to you, this is a setup. He sighed, like he had heard it 100 times before. The evidence says otherwise. Transfers from your account. Receipts in your name. I never made those transfers. I cut him off, my voice shaking. Someone forged them. Please, you have to believe me. But he didn't. They booked me, fingerprinted me, and locked me in a holding cell. Hours felt like days. Finally, my bail was posted, not by my family, but by my best friend, Rachel. She was the only one who stood by me when everyone else turned their back. We drove in silence. I stared out the window, my mind racing. How could Sophie do this? After everything I sacrificed for her, her tuition, her books, her expensive apartment near campus, her designer clothes, all paid with my hard work. And now, she had framed me for stealing from Dad. Rachel broke the silence. Sandra, you need to fight back. You can't let them ruin your life. Tears rolled down my face. I know, but where do I even start? My own father believes her. Rachel put her hand on my shoulder. Then it's time to show them the truth. You have the receipts, right? The bank statements, where you paid for everything. I nodded slowly. I had kept every document, every payment record, every tuition bill I had covered. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Good. We're going to collect every piece of proof. If Sophie thought you'd stay silent, she made a huge mistake. For the first time since my arrest, a tiny flame of hope burned inside me. This wasn't over. The next morning, I sat with Rachel at her apartment. My old life was falling apart, but I finally had a plan. We spread out. All my documents were spread out on the dining table: receipts, payment confirmations, credit card bills, tuition payments, rent transfers, every single dollar I had spent for Sophie and the house. Rachel flipped through the papers, shaking her head. Sandra, this is a mountain of evidence. You've basically kept your entire family afloat. I bit my lip, and now they're acting like I'm a thief. Rachel's voice was sharp. Not for long. We'll bring this to your lawyer. We'll file a defense, press charges for false accusation, and let the police investigate Sophie's lies. For the first time in days, I felt my strength returning. I wasn't powerless. I had the truth. Meanwhile, back at my father's house, everything was beginning to crumble. Without me paying the bills, the electricity was cut off after a few days. The gas bill went unpaid. Collection agencies started calling. Credit card companies began sending warnings. Sophie tried to act like everything was fine, but she had no idea how deep the financial hole was. She had always lived off my hard work. Now, with her expensive lifestyle and no money coming in, she panicked. Dad, can you cover my tuition this month? Sophie asked one evening. Dad rubbed his face, exhausted. I don't have that kind of money, Sophie. You know I barely make enough for the house. Her voice rose. But you promised. I have rent, books,
Fees.
how am I supposed to pay for everything? He slammed his hand on the table. Sandra was the one paying all this. You knew that. For a moment, Sophie froze. Her face turned pale. She didn't expect him to figure that out. You said she stole from me, Dad continued angrily. But now I'm starting to wonder, did she? Sophie tried to fake more tears. Dad, I only said what I thought was true. But the doubt was already planted in his mind, and it was only the beginning. A few days later, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Daniels. He was calm, serious, and exactly the kind of person I needed. You've brought me solid proof, Sandra, he said, flipping through the thick folder of documents Rachel and I had organized. This is very strong, but we need more. More? I asked, nervous. What else can we get? We need to trace who forged the transfers. If your sister really planted false evidence, the police can track the IP address, the login devices, and the accounts. Digital footprints are hard to erase. Hearing that gave me a strange sense of relief. Sophie might have been clever, but she wasn't smarter than the system. Mr. Daniels filed a motion for the police to reopen the investigation, this time focusing on Sophie's involvement. The detectives took the request seriously. After all, the original evidence was already suspicious once they saw my financial records. Within days, they pulled bank logs, security camera footage from the ATM, and traced the computer used for the transfers. The results shocked even me. All the transactions were made from Sophie's college apartment. The device used? Her personal laptop. The detective, Officer Grant, met with my father. Sir, I'm afraid the evidence suggests your daughter Sophie is responsible for forging the transactions and creating the false accusations. My father sat in silence, his face pale. No, that can't be. I'm sorry, Officer Grant said gently. The digital proof is very clear. When the police questioned Sophie, she tried to deny everything at first. But when they presented the evidence, the computer logs, the ATM footage, her lies collapsed. Eventually, under pressure, she broke down and confessed. She always got everything, Sophie cried. Sandra was perfect. Mom loved her more. Dad expected me to be like her. I just wanted one chance to have something for myself. Her voice trembled, but the officers didn't care. A crime was a crime. The police arrested her on charges of fraud, forgery, and filing a false police report. News of her arrest spread quickly through town. My neighbors, who once whispered about me, now looked at me with shame in their eyes. But I was far from finished. Now it was time for justice. The courtroom was cold and filled with quiet whispers. I sat beside my lawyer, Mr. Daniels, my hands gripping each other tightly. Across the room sat my father and Sophie. She looked small now, Nothing like the confident, spoiled girl who once smiled while I was dragged away in handcuffs. The judge entered, and everyone stood. This was it. My fight for justice had finally reached its moment. The prosecutor laid out all the evidence. The forged documents. The computer logs showing Sophie's laptop was used. The ATM footage proving she withdrew the money herself. My financial records proving I was the one paying for all the household expenses and Sophie's tuition for years. Sophie's defense attorney tried everything. Your Honor, my client acted under emotional distress. She didn't mean for things to go this far. But the judge wasn't buying it. Sophie Harris knowingly and intentionally framed her own sister, the judge said firmly. Her actions led to false arrest, public humiliation, and emotional damage. When I was called to speak, I stood up, my voice steady. Your Honor, I took care of my family after my mother passed. I worked 2 jobs to support my sister's education and my father's medical bills. I gave everything I had, and in return, they betrayed me. The lawsuit. The courtroom was silent. Mr. Daniels then filed an additional motion, a civil lawsuit for defamation and emotional damages. The judge allowed it, and my lawsuit would continue even after Sophie's criminal case. In the end, the judge handed down Sophie's sentence for years in prison for fraud and forgery, and an order to pay financial compensation to me for damages. My father sat frozen, his head in his hands. He never even glanced at me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was shame. As Sophie was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at me, her face full of regret and fear. But I felt nothing for her now. She had made her choices. This chapter of my life was finally closing. But my rise was only beginning. Weeks passed after the trial. For the first time in years, I woke up without feeling trapped. The weight I had carried for so long was finally off my shoulders. My civil lawsuit against Sophie moved quickly, now that the criminal case was over. The court ordered her to pay me a large financial settlement, not only for the false accusation, but for the years I supported her. I was finally being repaid for every dollar I had spent, and every tear I had shed. When the money came through, Rachel was the first person I called. You did it, Sandra, she said, smiling. Now what? I looked around Rachel's small apartment, where I'd been staying. For the first time in a long while, I had choices. I'm not going back to that house, I said. I'm going to start over. Build something for myself. Rachel's eyes lit up. Like what? I've always dreamed of opening my own online clothing boutique, I told her. And now I finally have the chance. With her support, I used part of the settlement to launch my business. I worked hard, just like I always had, but this time it was for me. Slowly, my boutique grew. Orders came in. Customers loved my designs. My business was taking off. Then came another surprise I didn't expect. One of my customers, Daniel, a kind, humble man who had started his own small marketing firm, reached out to help me grow my online store even faster. What started as business meetings slowly turned into late-night conversations, laughter, and eventually, something more. For the first time, I felt safe.
Loved.
Respected. I was no longer the woman who lived for others while they used me. I was building my own life, and this time, nobody could take it away. Almost 1 year had passed. My boutique was now a full business, and Daniel and I were stronger than ever, partners in life and work. For the first time, my life felt peaceful. But the past wasn't fully done with me yet. One afternoon, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. When I answered, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in months. It was my father. Sandra, please, he said softly. I know I don't deserve to call you, but I need your help. I stayed silent. Since Sophie's sentencing, my father had lost everything. Without my income, unpaid debts had piled up. Creditors had seized the house. His health had worsened. And now, broke and desperate, he was reaching out to the daughter he once threw to the police. I was wrong, he continued. I believed Sophie's lies. I should have trusted you. I see that now. I took a deep breath. Dad, do you have any idea what you put me through? I know. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then came the final blow, what he really wanted. Could you please help me financially? Just to get back on my feet. I closed my eyes. The old Sandra would have given everything again. But not anymore. No, Dad, I said firmly. I already paid once. I gave up years of my life for this family, and in return, you handed me over to the police based on a lie. I've moved on. There was silence on the other end. I hope you find peace, I said softly. But you'll have to find it without me. I hung up, feeling nothing but calm. Later that evening, I told Daniel what happened. He simply smiled, pulled me close, and whispered, "You did the right thing." As we sat on the balcony, watching the sunset, I realized something important. Betrayal had once broken me, but I had built something stronger. A new life full of freedom, love, and peace. And this time, it was mine alone.